Well, greetings to you. I was pondering the other day on how we appear to have somehow lost our fear of world war. Now, I was brought up in the 50s and 60s, and one of the things, regardless of your political views, was a fear of World War III, which would, of course, possibly manifest itself in a nuclear exchange, which, of course, is the end of the world as we know it, really, if you have a nuclear exchange. I think most people would accept that. And the bombers marched and students marched, erroneous in my view, because they wanted unilateral nuclear disarmament, which is clearly had all been tried by in the Japanese situation, where they didn't have a nuclear capability and the Americans did. That's what happens. So you need a balance of power. And the mutual assured destruction balance of power has worked very well for most of my lifetime, for all my lifetime to date. I'm 75. Now we have a problem here because we have lost our fear of world war. We've lost our fear of what used to be called MAD, mutually assured destruction. We've lost our fear. And the people who have particularly lost their fear of it are the American neocons in Washington, which is particularly dangerous. They don't seem to understand how the global dynamic, military dynamic has changed. America always led the world technologically. They always had the skills, the technical skills, better weaponry, so on and so forth. But over the years, we've seen that that doesn't actually cut the mustard when you're in a war, as they found out in Vietnam, they found out in subsequent conflicts. And now we find the NATO-sponsored war is showing that our foes, if you will, or potential foes, have more sophisticated stuff than we do. They have hypersonic missiles with multiple warheads which travel at 15, 10,000, 12,000 miles an hour, for which we have no defense. So we have no defense against these things. So you would imagine, would you not, that the way forward actually for the West is negotiation, diplomacy. This is the way forward. George or even Winston Churchill, who was very partial to a bitter war, Winston Churchill said George Orr is better than war. Now we have the problem at the moment, we're simply not talking to the potential foemen, the Chinese, the BRICS nations, so on and so forth, who are lining up against us, fed up with, frankly, with the Western bullying. And who could blame them? They're everywhere. And there's a map here, you'll see just where all the United States bases are. And you have to ponder, if you can, and of course a lot of people simply can't because they've been, perhaps my age, they've been brought up that the Soviet Union is there in all but name still, which of course is ludicrous, but there we are. You can see from the map, who would you, if you were a man from Mars, just suddenly come down and you wanted to work out who you thought was the global aggressor, and you looked at that map, you would not suggest it was any of the BRICS countries. Would you? You would suggest it was the West, under the guise of NATO. And of course, we're like a little yappy dog, are we not? Towing the Washington line all the time with a tiny weeny little army. And now it seems with military hardware, which is behind the foeman in sophistication. There's every reason for us to negotiate for peace globally and trade globally, and to stop this lunatic railroad to war, which is fundamentally quite a new thing. We're not talking. We need to talk. And we're not doing it. And it worries me. And it should worry you. But it doesn't appear to be worrying anybody at all. Certainly not the newspapers. Certainly not TV, certainly not the BBC. Do you realise what would happen? Do you realise what happens in a world war? We've had two, and it ended in tears, didn't it? I think we should do absolutely everything we can to avoid a future war. And if you look at these bases that straddle the world, you have to accept that the fact now that NATO is an aggressor. It's expanding. It's expanded eastwards, and we said it wouldn't. We did a deal that it wouldn't expand eastwards. And it is expanding all the time. You need to bring these troops home and doing no good at all. We've got flashpoints in the Middle East, flashpoints in the Horn of Africa, flashpoints in all sorts of other places. So let's pull back. Let's get our fear back. Fear is a good thing, you know. Fear is something that keeps you safe, because if you're afraid of something, it means you can actually make an assessment to see why you're afraid of it, what you can do about it, and what you can do to remove the threat. And we haven't lost our fear because we're all brave and gung-ho and wonderful people. We've lost our fear because we're stupid, and our politicians are stupid. And everybody associated at the moment with this useless NATO expansion is fundamentally stupid, or a psychopath, or a sociopath. They're not well. Listen to some of these comedians in Washington. Listen to them, and listen to the ridiculous statements that we sometimes find in Parliament. We've got to stop this before it's too late. As most of you know, my work is very heavily independently research-based, and I get my information from all over the world. It would help if you press the subscribe button and the little bell next to it, because the more subscribers I have, the more likely it is that international independent research institutes will share their material with me. It's most helpful, and then of course I'll automatically share it with you. So, surprise, won't cost you anything. Thank you very much.